Go ahead and get started. People are going to trickle in. I'm just going to read a little introduction that they probably won't mind missing. Um, Greetings from East Tennessee again. Source Water Collaborative and Southeastern Partnership for Forests and Water would like to welcome you to our webinar today, Tools and Resources for Advancing Collaboration. This is part of a series of webinars called Stronger Together, Landscape Partnerships for Drinking Water Protection. Some of you may have attended our last webinar about forest and water partnerships. It is on YouTube now, and we'll include a link to it in our follow-up notes. Our next episode will be on Thursday, June 17th at this same time, and hopefully I can get a registration link up at the end of this webinar. Today's show is designed to assist you in your efforts to guide landscape scale partnerships that advance source water protection. And whether your role is leadership or supporting, whether your focus is land or water, or whether your collaborative is established or just an idea in the back of your mind, you are in the right place for information and inspiration today. We'll follow up this webinar with slides and links for you to visit later. So try to concern yourself less with taking notes and writing down websites and resources. Instead, relax and let your mind absorb the varied ideas that will hopefully coalesce into a well-developed plan for conservation in your watershed. We also want this conversation and future conversations to be a two-way street. We want to know what tools that you know about that we can share with our networks, and also what information or resource gaps exist that we can help try to fill. We'll begin with a word from one of the new co-chairs of the National Source Water Collaborative, followed by a presentation from Sylvia Malm. And then you'll hear from yours truly about some collaboration strategies going on in the Southeast. Finally, Annika McGurk will talk to you about the Northeast Mid-Atlantic Partnership. And at that point, we'll do some Q&A and then head for a brief time into regional breakout rooms for more intimate discussions. We'll gather back in the main room for takeaways from the breakout room facilitators, and then end with an announcement for our next episode. So to start, I will hand the proverbial mic over to Adam Carpenter.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. My name is Adam Carpenter. I'm the Senior Manager for Environmental Policy at the American Water Works Association, AWWA, in our Government Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. I'm pleased to be here today. I am one of the co-chairs for the National Source Water Collaborative, having just started that role at the beginning of this year. Really looking forward to finding ways to help, enhance and keep the collaborative moving forward as a vital forum to share ideas and communicate amongst each other, and hopefully find various different ways to advance the issues, across all of our organizations within the collaborative, and for any who are interested in the topic who may not be collaborative members. David sends his regrets. He had a family emergency come up, and he was hoping to be here as well. But I just wanted to take the moment on behalf of both of us to say thank you for being here today. If you're listening live or for listening to the recording afterwards, I am going to be passing it to Sylvia Malm, who's a longtime participant, I guess, in the collaborative, and has had many roles over the years related to source water protection, to give a more detailed overview of the collaborative and the tools and resources that we have there, to help give everybody a running start, I guess, in accessing them and making use of them. So Sylvia, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Adam. And you can see from that previous slide that we now have 31 members of the Source Water Collaborative, and Adam's organization, the American Water Works Association, and David's National Rural Water Association were among the founding members, as was the Groundwater Protection Council, the organization I currently work for. And as Adam referenced, I was around 20 years ago when we first pulled this organization together, and it's really wonderful to see it continuing and enhancing what we're trying to contribute to collaborative efforts across the country. And Kathy is kindly advancing my slides, so you can go ahead with the next one. This is a graphic that I often use in presentations because it really helps highlight the focus on on-the-ground impacts and the importance of the work we do to get there and how that depends on partnerships across organizational lines. Because source water protection is really a team sport. You have many partners doing work towards water quality that may or may not know about the benefits to drinking water that they're creating. So starting with identifying some of those partners, looking at data, identifying priorities, developing a plan, engaging with partners who are committed to helping you move forward, and then implementing the plan, finding funding sources and gaining funding, always a key issue, and measuring impact on the ground. After this meeting, I hope we can share with you some recent and a recent evaluation of grantees' work in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation actually funded collaborative efforts, collaborative formation and enhancement, and found that those collaboratives, with their increasing effectiveness, resulted in increased BMPs on the ground. So I thought that was very validating for all the work that we all do. Next slide, thanks. This is an overview of the priorities of the Source Water Collaborative, which we're continuing in 2026. And as I said, we're looking forward to our new leadership and where that takes us in reinforcing the work that we do. We do a lot of promoting our Source Water Collaborative resources and member programs and publications, communicating on the importance of source water protection, developing new messages and outreach, which we're always focusing on, and leveraging all our members to help support collaborative efforts across the country. And also this year, we're particularly hoping to enhance member engagement. Next slide. And last year, we were able to meet for the very first time in a long time as a member meeting in June of 2025. We're continuing, as Kathy mentioned, our webinars, including this series, and we've had some related specifically to groundwater recently. We have a highlight section of our website. I'm going to be walking through the website shortly. And we're able to update the website to make it, I think, much more accessible in terms of all our information. We have 3 key subgroups through which we do a lot of our work: conservation programs in forested lands, the Collaboratives Network, and Clean Water Action subgroup. We also have a groundwater discussion group to highlight the importance of groundwater protection. Next slide. This is an overview of some of the key resources you'll find on the website. There's a lot of information here. A couple of things I just want to highlight. That small rectangular blue button in the center of your screen towards the top. When you go to our website, that's where you can click to sign up for our news highlights, and you'll get alerts for things like this webinar and other member events and webinars. And you won't get a lot of emails, but they'll contain a lot of really good information. This page also highlights a number of key resources that we put together over the years. Most recently, our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit Guide. We have a great ag collaboration toolkit that highlights working with NRCS and conservation districts. We also have a guide for ag leaders, and we have some information on partnerships on this first launch page: creative partnerships, tips for planning, for forming a collaborative, and other things that I'll be talking about in the next slides to come. Also, the guide for land use planners. I always like mentioning that. The American Planning Association, one of our members, put that together, and that contains really brief information for including source water protection considerations at each stage of the planning process, from comprehensive plan to site review. Next slide. This is our new resources and webinars page. It has the spotlight on our collaborative created resources and tools, and those are on the upper left here. You can click on a number of them, and Ag Toolkit is in there, a number of other things. Down below, you'll see helpful contacts, which is one of my favorites. We have there contacts for state source water coordinators across the country, also the regional EPA source water coordinators, and NRCS state offices. Those are all partners that I find myself helping to connect frequently. And other resources on the left, member resources. That section includes our member websites. that have key source water protection pages. On the right, under these topic areas, you will find both our webinars, associated resources, and a lot of information specific to these categories. So from public education and engagement to groundwater to funding and technical assistance. So I encourage you to look for our resources and webinars page. And it's helpfully at the very top here, you can see a number of key links, and that's one of the ones that's listed there. So when you go to sourcewatercollaborative.org, you can click on this one right away. Next slide. This is a map of our national network of source water collaboratives across the country. I'm happy to learn more about other state and watershed and local source water collaboratives that we can include on this map. As far as I know, this is the only network that focuses specifically on collaboration and source water protection. We are actively including members all the time. We have 7 regional and watershed collaboratives, 5 local, and 13 state. And we have a number of states who are very interested in forming their own source water collaborative, and we're starting to meet with them to move that process forward and to help them engage with partners. So you can find this map also at the top of our website under collaboratives near you. Please reach out to us and let us know if you know of collaboratives you'd like to add, or if you'd like to share with us your collaborative and engage with our network. Next slide. A companion to that, and created at the same time, is our How to Collaborate toolkit, which shows contains printable handouts, and you can download the whole thing from our website. It contains tips for when you're considering a source water collaborative, when you're in the forming stage, when you're enhancing and advancing an existing collaborative, and in the maintenance stage. And we've seen many collaboratives who've been around for a while go through a revitalization process, and happy to provide tips about that as well. Next slide. This infographic, we have 2. This one is for state conservationists with NRCS in each state. This was contained in the Ag Toolkit that I mentioned before, and you can also download and print this one. On the back is the text of the 2018 Farm Bill, which sets the stage for collaboration in each state, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this one identifies the common ground that we have with NRCS, and they're a very partner-oriented organization and are pretty easy to reach out to. A little bit hard sometimes, like with us, they have turnover, but to make the connection, and the common ground is protecting water quality. And the 2 sides of this infographic highlight what each of us brings to the table. So I encourage you to have a look at that toolkit if you're not working with NRCS now, or if you are, it might give you some new ideas. Next slide. So I mentioned the 2018 Farm Bill. That's been extended, and as we all know, the Farm Bill reauthorization is in the process now. But NRCS has a source water protection website, and on it is this map, a GIS map, so it's interactive, of high priority source water protection areas which were identified under the Farm Bill. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Farm Bill, but I will just say that it requires the NRCS to spend a minimum of 10% of their conservation program dollars in high priority source water protection areas. And it asks NRCS to work with utilities to identify these areas. Often state source water contacts are also engaged, rural water folks in each state as well. And I've been engaged in that process in Virginia, and I spend a lot of time connecting folks in all of these states with their NRCS contacts. These areas that you see on the screen here were identified can be identified based on water quality and quantity, and groundwater and surface water. And I'll share on the next slide some tips about what we've learned in the process of what makes this work better. Next slide. So I won't go through every one of these, but I just wanted to mention a couple. So NRCS guidance to their state offices is to identify 20% of the land, up to 20% of the land area in their state. We have a discussion about the data that states and others share data identifying areas of concern. And you'll see on that map that I just showed that some states have a pretty large area identified, and those states have requested a waiver from NRCS headquarters to go above the 20% based on data. And several states have successfully done that. Also, in part of this process, we identify conservation practices. And when in each state, then those practices can be reimbursed up to 90%. There's no limit on the number of practices. I've seen even the NRCS get confused about this and think that it's 10 priority practices. Some states have identified 50 or 80 conservation practices. And so I just wanted to mention that. There's a link here and on our website to find your state NRCS contact. Some states have a water quality specialist, unfortunately not many. That you can also contact the main number and ask for the executive assistant to the state conservationist and ask who the source water protection person is. The assistant state conservationist for programs at the state level also is likely to be knowledgeable. And sometimes it's the state resource conservationist, but picking one of these will get you to the right person. And I mentioned the NRCS source water protection page, and some states, Idaho, for example, has a source water protection page as well. Next slide. So in the forestry and conservation area, we've done a number of webinars. We did one in January. And we also have worked a lot to encourage people to be aware of their state forest action plans and to connect at the state level. NRCS can fund practices on privately owned forested lands, but at the state level, that if you access this plan, it often mentions water quality, sometimes mentions source water protection, and can be an avenue to lead to funding opportunities. And there's also a cool video on our website. Next slide. Clean Water Act, someone said to me years ago, someone fairly high up, said the Clean Water Act is source water protection. And we are looking at all elements of the Clean Water Act to educate ourselves and others about these opportunities and to make them more viable. This infographic on the right is interactive, so when you click on one of these land uses, it will take you to information about the relevant provisions of the Clean Water Act. And this is on our website. Next slide. We've recently produced an NPDES permit comment guide using the Clean Water Act discharge permits to protect drinking water sources. And we'll be doing more work in the Clean Water Act area in the coming months and promoting this document further. Often it seems like a daunting process, but it can be really important to comment on those permits as before they're issued or when they're updated. Next slide. These are the links from our members that I wanted to highlight. AWWA, the Association of State Drinking Water Administrators, my organization, the Groundwater Protection Council, National Association of State Foresters has the Forest Action Plans. NRCS has their page, which I mentioned, and National Rural Water Association has a new page on source water protection. And finally, US EPA has a source water protection website, and I wanted to highlight two things there. They have the funding integration tool, FITS, which presents information about federal funding sources and as well as examples and ideas about how to integrate those sources. And also it has the drinking water mapping application, which allows you to go in, see all the data that might be available in your area and make and download your own map to save for your use. Next slide. So we invite you to connect with the Source Water Collaborative in multiple ways. Sign up for those email alerts that I mentioned. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can check out our website resources and our webinar recordings on the Source Water Collaborative's YouTube channel. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. If anybody has any questions for Sylvia, they could throw them down into chat. I did want to say, I think that the timeline for the source water protection bulletin from NRCS, I think it reflected 2025, but we did find out about 2026. Do you know what those dates are?
Well, I have not heard anything absolutely rock solid specific, but I've heard that the bulletin might be coming out in May.
Okay, sounds
Generally,
good. Thank you.
just so people know, yeah, that's a good point. Generally, it comes out in this time frame, and so each state will start having those conversations, the NRCS folks, with the people I mentioned, and then they will have to report back to headquarters sometime in August with their recommendations.
Okay, great. Good to know. Thank you very much. I know you're on top of that.
I try.
All right. I love working with Sylvia. Okay, I guess that's my turn now. As
Can I introduce you?
yeah. Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
Kind of flattering too. So Kathy and I have worked together quite a bit. Kathy is my co-chair, my co-lead with that sort of the Collaboratives Network. And Kathy is sort of a coordinator extraordinaire of the Southeast Partnership for Forests and Water. We really appreciate all the work she does and all the different entities that she brings to the table. And I can see there's some other endorsements here. Thanks.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. You guys, most of you, I know I'm scanning the participant list and I see lots of names that I recognize. I'm the coordinator, like she said, of the Southeastern Partnership for Forests and Water. And I foster collaboration across the Southeast in order to increase forest conservation and management with the ultimate goal of protecting drinking water sources. And I am armed with the scientific foundation that healthy managed forests increase both surface water quality by reducing nutrients and sediment, like you see there. And Pete is in our audience. We want to thank Pete for this. And also the connection that healthy managed forests have to water quantity through aquifer recharge. So with that evidence, I can make a case to just about anyone for a healthy managed forest to protect our drinking water supplies. But since no one organization can tackle the problem of forest loss across an entire region or state or watershed for that matter, I see my primary role as seeding collaboration at both state and watershed levels. Now, this is a process slide here. We've seen various iterations of this, different versions. Some of these steps are combined in some of them, but this is a good starting point for this conversation because there are existing tools and resources to support every one of these. And wherever you're at in this process, you're not alone. Someone has done that before, maybe not in your specific watershed, but you can find models to emulate and apply to your watershed. And we could spend hours probably on every one of these steps, but I'm just going to highlight a few of them and put some of the tools and resources that I'll talk about in that context. That first one, define, is really well, it's broad. From the very beginning, it's important to draw some boundaries. This advice is applicable mostly to collaborations in the formative stages, but it's also applicable if you need to reevaluate the focus of your current effort. We all know how mission creep can dilute our efforts. Do you need to drill down and focus more specifically on a narrow purpose, a narrow aspect of conservation, just planting trees in riparian areas, or just conservation easements in source water protection areas? That might increase the chance of success. And in what geography will you focus? Most of us know and understand these hydrologic unit codes, which are the basis for just about any of these water-related tools or analyses. They start at a huge regional level, a HUC 2, O3 is the huge Gulf Atlantic region. And as you add numbers and get to the HUC 12 level, you're at the smallest watershed level, which is a much more manageable geography. And there are other name designations in some of these states. South Carolina has river basins, Florida has water management districts, and they're likely to have a lot of research for you on water quality or quantity concerns, land use conversion in the future models. But they're also very bureaucratic. You know, they have to operate within very tight constraints on their time and their scope, whereas you might be more free to do more and explore new strategies. but broad strokes are okay. You can fine tune later. Convene is my favorite step because it gets to the core of what Southeastern Partnership does and why it was formed in the first place. It was discovered that there was a natural overlap among the goals of land conservation, water, and forestry agencies, and that common ground was most evident in the area of source water protection. When we began to convene partners to talk about this overlap, we found more and more common ground. So with the help of AI there, I tried to illustrate how these conversations turned into a collaboration with a wide array of partners. Now, most of these are obvious, but a few of them, there's some nuance attached to them. So for example, the natural resources agencies, you're familiar with forestry and land conservation, water and wildlife at state, federal, and local levels. But water is a little bit nuanced. The Clean Water Act is administered in your state by a state water quality agency. The Safe Drinking Water Act is likely an entirely different department, and it might be with your water quality agency, or it might be with Department of Health. Source water, maybe its own program. A 319 source non-point source program is usually with your Department of Agriculture, but it might not be. So knowing where these departments are in your state organizations and reaching out to people in each one of them, they've got an interest in these conversations. Trade associations, you've got the Rural Water Association at both national levels and state levels. And in each, just about every state, I think now, we've got a designated source water protection specialist that's funded through the FSA. So it's a great person to invite to these conversations. American Water Works Association has national and state chapters. Your forestry associations are kind of obvious. The state organizations, which is Georgia Forestry, Tennessee Forestry Association, but you've also got wood products manufacturers associations and some other ones you may not think of at first, but would be either a good source of information for you or want a seat at this table to talk about investment. Soil and water conservation districts. Annika's going to be on here. She's with the National Association of Conservation Districts. And then you've got state associations all the way down to your actual conservation districts, which are probably more at the county level. Conservation groups, a lot of those are obvious, the Nature Conservancy and River Keepers, but you might not have thought to invite someone from the National Wild Turkey Federation or the White Oak Initiative to these conversations, but they're very interested and come with a lot of resources and information. Your community groups are important. Ruritan, Rotary, Junior League, they're very vested in what's going on in the community. And they may bring a small amount of funding, but a large amount of volunteer work to help you with some of these projects. Connections to the utility boards and things like that. They're very active in your community. Resource Conservation and Development Councils, RC&D councils. Look for those, see if there's one in your area. And, economic development, that's one that's not so obvious, but you need to be part of those conversations. So you can be the voice that says, sure, if we build all of these homes, we're going to have this increased property and sales tax revenue, but we're going to need a new multi-million-dollar water treatment plan and all of these added infrastructure costs. So a good cost benefit analysis is important, and you can be that voice that's talking to that. In academia, every state has a university-hosted Water Resources Research Institute. It's named something different in each one of them, but you're going to find a lot of good information there. And students, research, projects that they can perform for assessment, analysis, landscape design. You can get them involved in these things and to help you out with some of the more complex issues. Corporations and businesses, the ones that need clean water are obvious, the manufacturing plants and distilleries, but also corporations and businesses that need to invest in sustainability projects and that want to support their community and have a good reputation. The thing that I have found about engaging partners and keeping them engaged is to understand and appeal to their motivation for being there. In a lot of cases, you can look to their guidance documents. Sylvia mentioned state forest action plans. Well, your state forestry agency wants to tout its program for best management practices that protect water quality when timber is being harvested. And they would like a seat at the table to find out how they can work with these organizations. Your state wildlife action plan has identified areas of opportunity or whatever it's called in your state plan, and also species, endangered species. So if you can look to those guidance documents and find the motivation for these partners and agencies, that's going to drive both their staffing priorities and where they may be able to contribute staff time to your work, but also it can help direct their funding priorities. So if you can incorporate your work into an area of opportunity and it addresses a species of greatest concern, then you can possibly direct some of that funding to your projects. Sylvia mentioned the source water priority areas. That's a great example. NRCS is directed by law to devote 10% of its conservation funding to source water priority areas. So you can work with your state NRCS office and have those identified and figure out which practices they're going to reimburse at a higher level and drive more money in that direction. Let's see. Okay. Assess is a good one. This is my favorite. I know I've got a couple of Forest Service people on here. What do you need or want to know about your watershed? What is the data? Where there are endangered species or where the most impaired tributaries are? Who are the drinking water utilities with intakes in your watershed? You don't want to start from scratch to find out that information. It's likely already out there somewhere. And there are a few of these data explorers that will help you learn something new about your watershed. And whether or not you think you know your watershed thoroughly, these tools are probably going to help you discover something. Forest to Faucets here, and I've got links to these down in the bottom left-hand corner of the slides, and I'll put links in the follow-up notes. But I pulled up a watershed, Turkey Town Creek. You can see that's its 12-digit HUC code, and you can learn more about this particular watershed. It has one surface water intake that serves 44,000 consumers, but you've got 240,000 consumers downstream of your watershed. So you may find some interested corporations downstream that may want to invest in some upstream protection, and you can learn other things about it, the breakdown of forest ownership and how much the land cover and wildfire threats and all kinds of great information. So you may want to play around in there. The Protected Rivers Explorer, I still have a little bit to learn about this one and how to manipulate it, but I pulled up a watershed, the Bakers Creek watershed, which is a tributary of the Tennessee, and we can learn a few things from this one. There are 237 native aquatic species in there, 7 imperiled species. It's ranks very high in drinking water importance. And then it's also, you can pull up these maps. This is one I pulled up for Knox County. If you were giving a community presentation, you could pull up a good looking map and hover over each one of these watersheds and help paint a picture for which watersheds are how impaired or which ones are currently need a lot of help in terms of conservation. And EPA's How's My Waterway is a great one. I typed in Houston, Texas into that bar, and I'm able to find all kinds of data. I clicked on the drinking water tab, and here we can see that the city of Houston, the utility is the city of Houston, and it pulls from both ground and surface water. And in that particular watershed, there are 4 water bodies. 2 of them are ranked good, 2 of them are impaired, and you can even find out what they're impaired for: bacteria and low DO, dissolved oxygen. So, you know, before I get off assessments, though, I do want to say that not to be intimidated by GIS. You don't always need an expert to use that. GIS mapping and layers can be incredibly complex or very manageable. The explorers that we just looked at are complex online versions with multiple user-friendly features built into them. But simple maps are simple maps. One organization may have made a very simple map that shows where endangered mussels are found in a waterway, and another might have a map that shows where stream banks are eroded. So you could ask for those GIS layers, drop them on there, see where they overlap. And then, you know, not only are you going to discover hotspots that need attention, but you can possibly, if you can't get funding for a stream bank stabilization project over here, maybe you can appeal to the mussel folks and they'll be interested in you doing this work to improve water quality around there. So, you know, there's a lot that you can do. Then we move on to decide and plan. Let's see. The assessments that we looked at, that leads to prioritization in the areas. It gives you a lot of information so that you can figure out where you want to be working in that watershed to make the most impact. And you want to establish outcomes. What do you want to see happen as a result of the work that you're doing? You want to set good goals and metrics, work those in from the beginning so that you've got baseline numbers and you can see where your progress has taken you in 5, 10, 15 years. A good example of this, I've got a link here, is the Hill Country Alliance in Texas. I really liked the way that they set this up. They developed the 8 metrics and they work off of those. So water consumption, water, pristine streams, water spring flow, conservation lands, even night sky visibility. And for each one of those metrics, they have goals and they have set this baseline, so that they can see then what they've accomplished, what they're working toward, whether or not something's working. I've got some case studies on the Southeastern Partnership website, but if you've got a particular program that you're trying to develop, look and see where it has been done successfully, where case studies have been written about it, and use those as models instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Central Arkansas Water here is one of our favorites. It's got this ratepayer fee structure, roughly $1 per meter per month that goes directly into forest management and conservation, source water protection. And in fact, it's on their bill as a watershed protection fee. And Central Arkansas Water, they're very proactive, have been for a long time. They got the first ever in the world certified green bond strictly for acquiring forests for watershed protection. So they know the Sebago Clean Waters down here. This is up in Portland, Maine. And this is, I love the way that they've established this goal. They've got what they want to do, how much they want to do, when they want to do it by. And by doing that, you're not just helping be productive and accomplish the most conservation, but you're really engaging a lot of audiences when you establish that. It's something that, you know, communities and funders can latch onto. When you've established these baselines and now you want to develop this plan of action, try to incorporate metrics wherever you can. That's going to come. I'm not going to touch on the monitoring and evaluation part of this because I am running out of time, but there are a few simple tools that you can use to calculate the results of the projects that you want to implement. Runoff avoided, number of gallons of runoff avoided, number of pounds of nitrogen eliminated. And So you've got simple tools, and then you've got really complex ones for some of the bigger projects with the bigger corporations. Water quality benefit accounting, volumetric water benefit accounting, that one's for water supply and quantity. And then they just recently came out with biodiversity benefit accounting. So those are a lot more complex. But if you can get the right people to do that analysis in your watershed, you might draw in some really big dollars that you can use to actually get this work done. Grants, we need them so badly, but they do have their limitations. They're often project specific. They may require a match. And there's often little support for capacity building, for funding people like me, whose job it is to bring people together, to educate, to convene, to call that next meeting and send out notes and keep the conversations going. So give some thought as you're working in any of the planning steps, or even if you're advanced right now, give some thought to sustainable financing, impact investments. What can you build that, like the ratepayer fee structure, that is going to sustain your collaborative beyond just the grants that require so much time and energy? You know, I think that ratepayer fees at some point in the future are going to be a standard part of every utility bill. They're not there yet by any stretch, but the more that we can get utilities on board and doing that, the more receptive other ones, the smaller ones, are going to get, and we can make that the standard. Water markets are a little more complex right now. It's a lot of ag areas that are working on water credits, payments for ecosystem services. How can Suwannee Water Management District in Florida pay private forest landowner for implementing forest management practices and give that forest landowner a little bit of revenue that he's not going to have, because the utility is going to benefit from that increased supply, and it's going to have a more guaranteed source of water for its customers. And that private forest landowner is going to have less incentive to sell out, to fragment, and go against what we want to see in these intact watersheds. This is a Southeastern Partnership website, and you can see up here, if you go to the resources tab, my favorite, Forest to Faucets, the first link will take you right to the platform. Research, a lot of reports. You'd have to dig in here. These are Dropbox links to a lot of these papers, but I tried to separate them into topics that might help, specifically either forest and drinking water, or specifically cost benefit analyses. If you have trouble with Dropbox, just reach out and I'll send you whatever you need. Messaging and outreach is going to get you to these videos and fact sheets and great story maps by the U.S. Forest Service that are chock full of information and great presentation material. The case studies we talked about, and also some funding and financing. So that's my part right there. I will. Sylvia just came off. Do you have something to say, Sylvia, before I turn it over to Annika?
Yeah, thank you for all that great information. And I just wanted to add that when I was referring to the collaboratives map in my presentation, below that on our website, you can click on the state, source water collaboratives, watershed, and local. Each of them has a 2-page summary of their formation of their collaborative, the contaminants they're trying to address, their members, their success story there. So I just wanted to let people know to go there as well.
That has been great. I've looked at a lot of those, and because it's a template that she's got, each one answers the same questions. You can scan through a lot of these different collaboratives and find the ones that are working on issues that are issues to your particular watershed, or ones that are employing techniques or communications methods that you may want to emulate. So it is a great source of information. All right, Annika came on camera, so she's ready to go and talk about the Northeast Mid-Atlantic Partnership for Forest and Water.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And as Kathy and Sylvia both mentioned, wonderful resources on both of those websites. I would say the Northeast Mid-Atlantic Partnership, we sort of look to the two of you as our guiding star. So part of what I'm going to talk to you about now here in a minute is that we are also looking to develop resources similar to our collaborators here. Annika McGurk with the National Association of Conservation Districts. We're the National Association for the 3,000 soil and water conservation districts nationally, and the lead organization for this partnership. If you want to advance, Kathy. Our partnership footprint. We span 13 states, Maine to West Virginia, as well as bumping out into Ohio. At the core, we're connecting these dots between these states, as well as the forest and water sector, and the practitioners doing important work across agencies, county lines, state lines, you name it. Next, Kathy. We are much newer around the block than the Source Water Collaborative or the Southeastern Partnership. The Northeastern Partnership really looked to the Southeast as the model for which to establish itself. And so in 2022, more than 80 partners across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic came together, and following those discussions, NACD did submit a Forest Service Landscape Scale Restoration Grant, which is the current funding source for this partnership. Next. We have a dedicated steering committee that have helped us lay out our current long-term goals that you can see here. These are really about increasing and building capacity and strengthening those collaboration points between the sectors that I mentioned. This is anticipated to change. And so, you know, as the work informs these goals, we certainly see that reflected, but this is where we guide ourselves year to year currently. And on our next slide, we have our mission and vision that were also laid out by our steering committee, and really just ensuring that we're building that collaborative network to leverage these shared resources and do more good work together, essentially. All of this information, as well as our organizational documents, are on our website. Our Connecticut partner is one of our lead implementation partners currently. If you visit our website, they did do a webinar series for us about a month ago, and they have a full overview of the great work that's happening there. But this landowner support program with that forest resilience, cost share, and drinking water nexus led by the Connecticut Council on Soil and Water Conservation certainly has some associated tools and resources that we would encourage you to check out. And Ohio, here on our next slide, similarly, we got to hear more about the work that they're leading through the Ohio Division of Forestry, implementing funds through this landscape scale restoration grant on the ground there in Southeast Ohio in particular. Lots of great B&P materials and really exciting collaboration between soil and water conservation districts in both states there. We also have some new implementation states coming on the pike, Kathy. So Pennsylvania and West Virginia were the recipients of a second landscape scale restoration grant that NACD applied for. And so those partners are really kicking off in a big way on the ground over this calendar year. And I would be remiss to not mention that our West Virginia partners are actually in meeting right now in West Virginia as they work to build out their state partnership model. Those partners have been meeting for several years now and really catalyzed the rest of the region, if you will. And what we're looking at this year, Kathy, we have a new grant, as I mentioned, with implementation activities planned. But as we're thinking about partnership development and shared tools and resources, this partnership is going to be looking to create some how-to references as well as some training materials that we would love some input on. So thinking about what we can do for you as we're trying to build out 2026, next slide, Kathy, you know, we do cover a 13-state network. We are national in scope because we have a national lead organization, and then we're working grassroots to grass tops in this region. So for those of you that are in the region, and we're going to talk here in a minute in our breakout room, we're really curious to hear from you, and we are really curious to be able to get that local sense of priority and connect you into the broader nexus of practitioners that are currently engaging with us and that are looking to get engaged. And then on that next slide, as we're thinking about how we're going to be developing these resources, we want to think about sort of this three-legged approach. How do you enable a state partnership model? Kathy had a lot of really wonderful resources there earlier. How do we communicate effectively across these two sort of sectors to our end user, which is a landowner? And then how do we support those sort of folks in the middle, our natural resource practitioners that are, working collaboratively with us at all levels? We have a contact slide in here, which I know Kathy's going to show towards the end as well. But yeah, as I mentioned, the Northeast Partnership, we've been around for just a handful of years, and this is the year that we're really looking for the things that you need in the landscape as a practitioner, as a partner, as a collaborator. We're interested to know what you're hearing and what might benefit the communities that you're serving and the collaborators that you're already partnered with. So I'll stop there. We're going to discuss more in breakouts, but always so glad to be invited when the Southeastern Partnership asked, and in particular to be around our Source Water Collaborative friends and partners. This is a very well networked and well resourced group, and I'm sure that you benefit from them as much as we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Okay, we've got a few minutes here. We're doing great. We're on track. So I wanted to offer an opportunity for anybody that's on the call to turn on their camera and mic and either ask a question of any of us or share anything that any of your takeaways from what we've talked about. I will mention that I did mention forest to faucets quite a few times, and there is actually work underway. That was forest to faucets 2.0, and there is work underway for forest to faucets 3.0. And we're very excited about that. I know that the Forest Service is working hard to make that happen and to get as much input as they can as to which features you guys want incorporated into a new version so that they can try to make that happen. And feel free to reach out to any of us and we'll put you in touch with the right people. Hi, Kyra.
Oh, hi. I can't stand the silence, so I thought I'd jump in. And I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet. So as one of the co-hosts, I just thought I'd kick us off. I was wondering if anybody who's in the audience can speak to one of the things that Kathy mentioned, which is given the constraints of funding currently and the challenges we face in the work we do in source water protection for capacity building and, people like Annika and people like Kathy who are doing incredible work, it's harder to find grant funding. And because I apologize, I should have introduced myself, Kyra Jacobs, EPA Region 1 Source Water Protection Coordinator. Because I work in the region where the Sebago Clean Waters Project is, which is Portland, Maine. I was wondering if anybody in the audience can speak to or put a message in the chat if you had any success with private funders. So you may or may not have caught something important that Kathy said. So she was talking about a particular water supply where they served, tens of thousands of people, but downstream they served hundreds of thousands of people. So whether it's a source that's a river or a watershed that supplies drinking water to multiple communities, surface water suppliers like Portland, Maine face development pressure. And so in the case of Portland, Maine, they, with funding from many of the partners on this call, the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities, EPA, and NRCS. Portland, Maine, Sebago Clean Waters was created with the Healthy Watershed Grant. And I think it's a tremendous model for some of the work that we need to do because land conservation is expensive. It's hard to do. So I'm just trying to see if we can kick off a conversation or get a little more Q&A. I know it's hard to do in a big group. We were up to 75. Now we're at 70, I think. So is anybody able to speak to that? Private sources of funding?
Specifically for
foundations?
capacity?
Yeah, or in general for any of the work we're talking about here. So I would say foundation funding or businesses, commercial, industrial.
I've always got something to say. No one else does. I'll mention a great model. I'd love to know if it exists anywhere else. It's down in Texas called the Texas Water Action Collaborative. And it serves as a kind of matchmaker service between groups that have a specific project and they need funding for it, and private investor corporations that have sustainability goals that they want to meet. And if the results of this project are going to benefit water quality or quantity, and if that's the goal of that corporation, then they can come together and meet each other and provide funding for that project. I know that that's being done in Texas, and the idea of this matchmaker service seems like it should be everywhere, some kind of a format. Does anybody have experience with that or know of a similar program? Silence used to bother me on these calls. It doesn't anymore.
I don't have an answer to that specifically, and hope maybe somebody else in the audience will be thinking of that. But I wanted to mention, just to reinforce what I said about the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, because they did, I know Kathy, you mentioned it, and it's true, a lot of funders want to fund projects on the ground with concrete results, which is understandable. At the same time, having a collaborative effort usually makes the results better, which is what the evaluators of the NIFWIF grants in the Chesapeake Bay found in Chesapeake Bay watershed. So, and they did specifically, NIFWIF did specifically fund collaborative capacity. And they're going forward with that in the grant they just announced early in February, and I believe in some of their other grant programs as well. So we'll be checking into that. I just wanted to mention that because that is unusual and meaningful and important, because we do notice that a lot of our source water collaboratives do much better when there's a convener who helps keep everything on track. It sounds simple, but it's really not.
It's essential.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go into regional breakout rooms. I've got different regions set up and a facilitator for each one. I think everybody's a lot more comfortable talking when we're in smaller groups. So I'm going to go ahead, if I can do this right, and open these rooms and let everybody pick a room to join. Is everybody seeing that option?
I'm not seeing it
Yeah,
yet.
it looks like you have to scroll down to the bottom, Kathy. Just I want to make note of that for everyone.
Oh, okay. So some people are joining the different groups, so they must be seeing the option to do that.
Yeah, I'll just mention that I'm seeing it on the like the more and the three little dots and join breakout room. Little
Oh,
different
I
than it's
see.
been in past.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
I see it now.
No problem.
Okay, so if you go to your three dots button, then you should see the option to pick a breakout room. And anybody who's left, I can assign to that. And I'm going to stop recording.